Hello and welcome. I'm starting a new YouTube series to walk through what my process looks like as a senior level developer in starting a brand new project from scratch and building it all the way out to production ready and deployed and accessible over the internet. So I'll walk through that process in detail. My goal is to build out an API that we can make available through rapidapi.com. Rapid API, which you can read about their website here. Basically, you can host various APIs through here and make them available for sale. For example, I just happen to click on Twilio. So you can configure plans and sell access to your API through this website. I don't actually plan on making sales with my tutorial API, but I do plan on showing what the process looks like to go from nothing to something that you can host and make available through this website and make money off of it if that's your goal. My real goal is to just demo like how to go through that process. What do the decisions look like? What technologies are available for use to go from nothing, just an empty project in GitHub, all the way to having something that you can make money from. I do plan on using Java, the programming language Java, to do this, and I'm going to build it like an enterprise system would be built. So I'm not going to put together just a quick and easy Node.js application in 15 minutes and be done with it. Right, I'm going to do like an enterprise, Java, kind of not quite full stack since we're only building an API, but half stack, back end, production ready, good speed and performance, zero downtime, hosted in AWS, some database access stuff in there, logging in there, automatic configuration, reloading, and things like that. Basically, all the necessary things in order to have an easily maintained enterprise system that you can deploy. So hopefully it's useful. Hopefully it helps junior and intermediate developers take their game to the next level in the industry, and be more valuable and marketable to enterprise companies. If you want to work for a big company, or even a small company that wants to act like a big company. Or if you have enterprise customers and you need to be proficient in the technologies that they want you to be proficient in. So hopefully this whole series provides a lot of useful information. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to describe kind of what I'm thinking, what I'm planning to do, and why I'm choosing what I'm choosing. And so we'll go ahead with that introduction out of the way. We'll go ahead and jump right in. I mentioned that I'm going to use Java, so I have a bunch of versions of Java, but I do plan on using the latest 17 version of Java. You can use any version of Java from version 8 up, so whichever you have installed is likely going to be fine. In situations where I'm using functionality that's only available in newer versions, I'll call those out specifically, but generally the code is going to be nearly identical. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to go install the latest Java. You can use whichever one you have. But if you're going to install one, you might as well get the latest one. And version 7 is a long-term, or 17 is a long-term release version as well. So it just came out in September, I believe. So it's available for a long time. We're also going to use Maven as our build tool. You have talking and typing at the same time. I'm using version 3.8.3. You can use pretty much any version as long as it's 3. Probably 5 plus. They're pretty much synonymous. You could use Gradle. Gradle's the other option that you have for build tool. Very similar in concept to Maven. The configuration is slightly different. Probably a little bit more powerful, but I think Maven might be more common. That might not be correct, but Definitely both of them are heavily used, so you can't really go wrong with which one you pick. I'm going to start with Maven. Potentially in the future, I'll add support for Gradle as well, and show what those differences and what the similarities are between the two. But for now, I'll be sticking with Java 17, Maven 3.8.3. I'm about to talk about Git. So I'm using Git version 234.0. It doesn't matter that much as long as you have a relatively recent version of Git. And I mentioned Git because we're going to use github.com to host our source code. You could use gitlab.com as well if they're almost identical in terms of the functionality they provide, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick. I believe GitHub is more popular and more heavily used, and so I'm going to use GitHub as well. Probably there's more familiarity with it from the developers out there. So this is pretty much a brand new account, just created just a couple days ago. I've done almost no setup at all to this account. I did add just a profile picture, and I did upload an SSH key that will allow me to not have to type in a password every time I want to push things up or pull things down. So you can generate an SSH key using SSH keygen and just answer the questions that it provides. With what that's going to end up with is giving you some ID RSA files in your .ssh directory inside your home directory. So the ID RSA is the private key, ID RSA.pub is the public key. This is what it looks like. It'll start with SSH RSA. It'll have these encoded bytes here and maybe an email at the end. So basically you would just copy this line up here and do a new SSH key and paste it in, and you'll see some hash like this. So nothing too tricky. I'm sure you can figure that out. And once you have that, then you can communicate with GitHub over SSH and not have to type a password in, which is pretty useful. So, like I mentioned, this is basically a brand new account. I don't really have any repos yet containing source code here. So I'll go ahead and head into my repos directly or page and click new. I'll go ahead and call this tutorial API. I suspect tutorialapi.com is available. Okay, it is. Even if it's not, it doesn't matter. If that domain is still available by the time I'm ready, I might go ahead and buy it just to help this tutorial go along. But I'm going to make it public. You could make it private. In fact, it's probably normal to make it private, so you can put files in there like SSH keys and things that you don't necessarily want anybody to see, passwords, things like that. I'm going to leave this public and I'll let anybody have access to it. I'm also going to click this add a README file. We're not really going to do much with this README file, but just to have something that I can clone down will probably be useful. And I'll go ahead and click create repository. All right, there we go. We have our repo created. It's got just a single file in it, readme.markdown, which is this content here. You can edit through this user interface, right? There's just one line in here, but I'm not going to edit here. So now that we have our repo created, this green code button gives us a few options for cloning this repo. Cloning basically means pull down a copy of this repo locally so that we can make changes to this repository locally. So I'll click the SSH one since I have my SSH keys all set up and configured. Hit the little copy button, and from here I can do git clone and then paste in this URL, and it will create a tutorial API directory. Another option is I have IntelliJ here. You can use IntelliJ as an IDE, or you can use Eclipse as an IDE for Java development. I'm going to go ahead and use IntelliJ. You can create a new project, or you can actually get from VCS. VCS means version control system. like Git in our example. So I copied this URL. I can paste this in here, and I'd effectively get the same behavior as doing a git clone over here. I could do it in IntelliJ as well. So it doesn't really matter. The directories will end up the same. So it's going to end up in my home directory under the source directory in this tutorial API directory, which is what would happen if I ran this command over here too. So I'll go ahead and click clone. And there we go. We've got our project cloned down. It just has this one file, readme.markdown, which I can see in the list here. And so yeah, we've got our project ready. I've got my font size hopefully big enough to be able to see and read in both windows. So now that I did the clone in IntelliJ, I don't need to do the clone over here, so I can just cd into that directory. If I show everything, there's a few things. So Git did create, or IntelliJ did create this .idea directory, and when I did the git clone, it created this .git directory. So we're not going to do anything with these directories. Those are managed by our tools, and so whatever they put in there is for them to manage and not for me to manage. But if I do a git status, I can see Git doesn't know anything about this idea directory, and really we don't want it to know about that. That's not something that we're going to push up into our GitHub repo. That's basically just locally created files that supports our IntelliJ development environment. So if we push this up into the repo, then any configuration that's in here would impact how other people who are looking at our code and cloning the code locally would impact what they see in their own development environments, because we're basically giving them our configuration by doing that. And if somebody was looking at it in Eclipse, they wouldn't see this, or they wouldn't use that directory necessarily with Eclipse, but they would see it, and it would be sitting in their project kind of unused. So in general, we don't want generated stuff being pushed into our repo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dot. I guess I don't need to do it over here. I can create it over here. I'm going to create a new file called .gitignore, and I'm going to tell it. Well, it's asking me whether I want to add this file to Git. I'm going to choose no at this point. Don't ask again, and I'll do all my Git things myself, and instead of through automatically happening through IntelliJ. So I clicked don't ask again. Same thing down here, don't ask again. Okay, so now in my file I can say .idea. So I'm telling Git ignore .idea, and it turned a darker gray, so it's harder to see. And over here, if I do git status, .idea doesn't show up any longer, but now .gitignore does show up because I added it. So let's do git add .ignore. Let's commit. So basically, when we added, we've marked that file as a new file that we're interested in tracking through our source code. If I do git status, it's now green because it's added. And now I can do git commit and specify a message. And so now I've permanently stored, well, not permanently, I've added a commit that keeps track of this new change that we've made it, and it's just stored locally. So if I come back over here and do a refresh, I don't see that gitignore file here because it's only stored locally at this point. So my next step is to git push origin main. So my main is my current branch, and main is the default branch for the project. So I'm going to push all my changes back up into GitHub, into the main branch. So now, like I see, writing total 3. So it was able to push that information up to GitHub. Now if I refresh this, I can now see my new file that I added. And I can see the name of my commit here as well. So if I look at all the commits, the very first one when the project was created, and now the one that I just pushed is added as well. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here at the 15-minute mark, and we'll pick up where we left off in the next one. Thanks a lot.